The world stands at a historic juncture, a crisis unlike any other in recent memory. The global economy is experiencing its worst recession since World War II, and governments across the world are rewriting their prospects of recovery while dealing with the once-in-a-century economic shock. The path looks grim, but there's hope over the horizon. Welcome to the new episode of WION's special broadcast, India Budget 2021. I am Gautam Chikarmane, Vice President at Observer Research Foundation. The real and the financial worlds seem to be clashing today. The economy is contracting, but the markets are at their all-time high. Last week, the Sensex hit 50,000. What is pushing markets higher even as their underlying assets are facing problems? To discuss this further, we have Ashish Chauhan, Managing Director and CEO of BSE, Nadish Desai, co-founder of Jago Investor, and Dr. Juan Manuel Lopez Zafra, economist and professor at Universitario de Estudios Financieros. I hope I have the pronunciation right. I'm going to begin with Mr. Chauhan. Mr. Chauhan, last week we saw the Sensex touch 50,000 and come back. And this has been happening against all odds when the economy is contracting, jobs are getting lost, businesses are losing, some of them are shutting down. Do you see any conflict here?
In a way, the perspective or the angle we look at is what gives us conflicts or gives us positivity. So there are many ways to look at it. When the panic started in 2020 around March, nobody thought that it will affect the world so much, especially the economic activity. But index went down 40%. Index went down from 42,000 to 25,800. And at that time, nobody said that it is not reflecting economy. They were very happy because in India, we also celebrate negativity. So that's how it happened. Although we also brought in what I call experts of Indian origin from America, who are not even listened to in America, but in India, we give them a lot of importance. Many of them, I recall, said that India will have 30 crore, that is 300 million infections by July 2020, and 500 million, 50 to 100 million people death. Nothing of that sort happened. So as the time passed, people realized that it was fake, or probably we have done better. Whatever the case, slowly people started coming to the market. They were also staying at home. So they started investing more because they started watching television and so on and so forth. But effectively, today, if you look back, when you have minus 30% or close to that in the first quarter, that is April to June, and overall for the year, if you are predicting minus 7%, are you going down or are you going up? In my opinion, the first quarter, if it is minus 30%, for the rest 3 quarters, if you have to go to minus 7% only, you have to be 23% up in the next 3 quarters, right?
No, Mr.
And that's
Chauhan,
why
nobody is denying.
People who understand this arithmetic.
Let me rephrase this question, Mr. Chauhan. At 50,000, at the Sensex of 50,000 and at a PE ratio of 34, do you think the Sensex is, the expectations inside the Sensex are reflecting a brighter recovery, a greater optimism, more jobs around the corner, more businesses coming up?
It can be seen that way. See, what happens is the index is actually not about the past. And the numbers we look at are of the past. Index actually is also about future. How do you basically derive this analysis is that you take next 50,000, next 50 years, next 30 years kind of numbers, then bring them to the net present value. And that's where more people are now more sanguine, more confident about India's recovery. And also what India has done over last 11, 12 months in terms of providing vaccine to the world, providing many help to the world, and also responsibly handled itself. I think a lot of people are bringing money. Last 3 months, the amount of foreign investments is also humongous. And slowly Indians have started becoming more confident. You can say that people are more confident than the reality, probably yes, because the markets, especially investment cycles, work in pendulum basis. When the number starts going up, people start investing more. When the number starts going down, people actually start selling more. And that also does not reflect reality. 25,000 index also did not reflect reality. Probably 50,000 may also not be reflecting reality. But who are we to know?
Thank you, Mr. Chauhan. Mr. Desai, I would like to come to you. Do you, as a co-founder of Jago Investor, how do you see this Sensex at 50,000 amid the past numbers, as Mr. Chauhan just said, coming down of contractions and job losses, etc. How do you see this 50,000 number?
Well, I see right now market is more in an uncharted territory right now, and it's the time for investors to be a little more cautious and focus more on asset allocation rather than having the feeling of missing out and then they start participating right now. So I feel there's complete mismatch between the earnings of different companies and where the market levels are right now. And there's a lot of free money. The interest rates which has gone down all over the world. So a lot of money, liquidity has got pumped into the system. And India has always been a capital hungry country. So, so I feel this is a situation where you can't predict the market. Stock markets will and will always remain unpredictable. But this is a time to be a little more cautious and focus more on the asset allocation rather than just looking at 50,000 or where the markets are right now.
So would you then contradict Mr. Chauhan, in which he says that 50,000 captures the future expectations rather than the past? For instance, the PE ratio, which I mentioned to you at 34, is one of the all-time highs. But perhaps it's a reflection of what is to come rather than what has been. So would you see that, would you disagree with Mr. Chauhan on that?
I agree. The market, certain times it jumps on a higher PE, it goes to a next level, and that is what it has happened right now. But now two things have to happen. Either the earnings have to match to the PE level where the markets are right now, or the market has to correct. So I think these are two possibilities now.
So do you think, just to push a little further, do you think the earnings will rise by 20 to 25% in order to come back to the past? And what is the average normal, so to speak, although there is no normality in the markets, but just to come back to a return to a mean, do you think earnings will rise by 20 to 25%?
No, I don't see that, because there's a lot of pain in a lot of sectors. It is not like all industries are doing well, and we should not measure the Sensex by, like all the companies are doing well. So I don't think we can maintain that 20-22% kind of growth, on a quarter-on-quarter basis. So it will take time. We still don't know the impact of the pandemic, and it may continue for next 1 or 2 or 3 years. So I think the growth will be slow and gradual, and it will, we are on the recovery path, but still it will take some time for things to actually normalize.
Thank you. Dr. Zafra, I would like you to look at India from a distance, but context it within the global markets. When I was looking at the various indices a few days ago, I saw that most of the indexes across the world of all major markets are quite close to maybe about 10 to 25% away from their 52 weeks high. And that is where the global markets are also perhaps headed. How do you see markets in general and the India market in particular?
Okay, my point is that financial markets, stock markets in particular, debt markets are completely disconnected from reality just because of the intervention of the central banks all over the world. So that huge amount of money that is coming into the markets, into the society, but finally into the financial system through the help of the central banks is completely disconnected in reality from the financial markets. That is the point. I've heard that, and normally I would agree that financial markets are discounting future. This is what theory says. When you're investing, it's because you are thinking about something that will happen in the future. But at the present time, it's no more true. It's not true anymore. Just because the central banks are pushing so huge amount of money into the markets that everything is disconnected now. So we have on one hand the financial markets, and on the other hand the real markets. And this is not for the first time, but this is clear now that reality is disconnected from financial. and we have to try to think about what does it mean in the future. So the whole world markets are surging just because of that push, and India is not a market apart. I mean, it's into the global system, so the Nifty 50 is going up, pushed by exactly the same wave of expectations, but just financial expectations from the money of central banks.
So to take your argument a little further, therefore, do you see this dissonance break down over the next 3 months, 6 months, or maybe even 12 months, when at some point liquidity mismatch between the mismatch between liquidity sloshing in global markets and the real assets delivering what they need to breaks down? Do you see a market crash? Or do you see global markets crashing within the next, let us say, 12 months?
It's very difficult to predict at the moment. I mean, with the central banks adding so huge amounts of money to the markets and all the governments pushing through debt, just that the crash don't happen, it's very difficult to predict any movement. I mean, normally, in a normal situation, it would be much easier to have a forecast. But at the moment, I mean, it's so difficult that, I mean, my predictions are that during that year, we are going to see more troubles than benefits in the markets. But this is just a bet at the moment, because you cannot use tools from the economic analysis and the financial analysis just to forecast what is going to happen, because everything is corrupted in an economic way, using the economic words, just because of the impact of the central banks in the market. That's the point.
So I'll just come back to Mr. Chauhan. Mr. Chauhan, like Dr. Zafra just mentioned, it's difficult to evaluate current financial markets from yesterday's tools, and because this is particularly probably the blackest of all black swan events that we are going to see. And now there is a vaccination coming on the one side, and on the other side there is a greater disruption where people are moving, they're changing the way they work, how they work, the angularities of, for instance, not necessarily going to office. There is a whole lot of disruption happening, and which is also being reflected in the markets, in the stock prices of markets. How do you see all these together? The black swan events, the disruption, and the adaptation of businesses?
Yeah, I think everyone is correct in their own ways. And in some ways, when I look at the world, it is many imbalances that were built up in terms of since 1971, when the dollar backing for the gold had been taken away. The world, whenever it comes into crisis, any country or together, like in world financial crisis or in .com crash or 2001 crash and all the governments of the world end up putting tremendous liquidity into the market. What it does is it creates a lot of liquidity, and slowly that liquidity finds its place into the asset prices, which go up. And it is not today's. So our economic book, whatever we are teaching everywhere, including what I studied, and I'm also a professor in many places. So what our economics books are 100-year-old, while as the world of last 50 years is slowly evolved into what I call abundance of money.
Mr. Desai, in the context of the technological changes and the optimism that Mr. Chauhan has now just mentioned, do you think asset allocation as an idea needs to be revisited? Because suddenly the equity aspect of the asset allocation is getting disrupted in a very strong manner. Do you think you need to rethink asset allocation for this disruptive age?
Yes, I think a lot of investors will start participating in equities, if they feel left out, and the focus will be more only on one asset class because it has done well in last few months. But asset allocation is the key, because markets will go up and down, but asset allocation as a principle is here to stay. And all those investors who will stick to asset allocation, who will stick to the fundamentals, the principles, or the ground rules of personal finance, I think they will win, and they will have an edge over other investors, and they will at least not have bad experiences as an investor.
So let me push this question a little further. Suppose you see a great disruption in technology stocks and they enter the Sensex in a far stronger way. Don't you think the rate at which the equity part of the portfolio will expand will outrun any kind of asset allocation theoretical structures that you may have made for your investors?
Yeah, so that's the reason why that's where asset allocation comes into picture, where you are not just concentrating on one sector or one particular stock or one particular industry, but then you are diversifying between different asset classes. That's where I think asset allocation plays a major role, and that's the real importance of asset allocation. Because right now the market is completely polarized. It's just a few stocks which is doing extremely well, and it is pulling the Sensex up. I think from last 2 years I've been observing that phenomena. So in this kind of situation, I think asset allocation plays a very, 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 very important role.
Thank you. Dr. Zafra, your final word on this. Don't you see how technology is changing? I'm sure in Spain or everywhere across the world, things have changed completely. Do you think these changes, these disruptions, these productivity jumps are being embedded into the markets, into the financial markets within the context of all this, the vaccine, the pandemic, the insecurity?
Okay, I think these are 2 points that normally should go together, but at the moment they are not. I mean, it's clear that the technology is bringing productivity, but at the same time, we are losing jobs all over the world. So it's something that we have to take into account. So on one hand, we have the technology that is improving dramatically productivity, and on the other time, we have the real world with this loss of jobs. So on one hand, we have to take into account that the fact that technology is bringing that these increases of productivity everywhere. So the stocks and the markets will improve from that productivity, because investing in the sectors that will bring that productivity up, that are very intensive in technology, will return. We have the returns clearly soon. But on the other hand, we have to see if people in the real markets, out of the financial markets, can really buy all the things that we are improving at the moment. So normally, in a normal way, that in a normal path that we are not, obviously, the technology we have in a slower path that is going down, that is going now. But the problem is that technology is going faster as ever in history, and at the same time we have a world pandemic. So it's very difficult to predict anything in the next 10 months. In a long term, yes, I'm pretty sure that thinking in a post-pandemic scenario, we could think that and with the retirement, with all that the liquidity that is in the market going out slowly, because if it goes fast, we are going to have very big problems. But with that liquidity going slowly out of the markets, then we can predict that in a 5 years term, normally investing in these very high tech sectors with and there are so many startups everywhere battling and fighting the giants of the internet, the giants of technology. So we are at the present time we are seeing a very bright future. I'm very confident on that. But we have to take care with the problems of the financial markets, of the public systems and the public sectors, and all the debt that is going into the market that can't can leave some kind of stain in the future. So my point is that the technology will bring us a very brighter future, but we have not to forget the problems with the financial markets at the moment.
So very quickly, Dr. Zafra, do you, because of the arguments that you have just given, are we going to see a greater global inequality, what people generally are calling as the K-shaped recovery?
I mean, I don't think so. I think everything depends on what is the framework and the time we're talking about. Maybe in the next 2 years we will have a higher inequality between the developed world and the developing world. But in 2 years' time, normally, with a democratic access to the internet and to the technology, I mean, Africa is doing extremely well at the moment. You have Bitcoin's markets in Africa, not just because of Bitcoin, they can be a question of mood, but just because it tells you how people are interested in everywhere, in technology and in finance at the same time. So I don't think we are going to see an increase in the long term. I mean, in the long term, maybe in the short term, yes, but in the long term, I think technology will help to bring inequality down. This is my point again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zafra. Thank you, Mr. Chauhan, Mr. Desai. It's been wonderful talking to you.